Winnie the Pooh said, a weed is a plant that you do not know yet. This is ideal weeding conditions. If the weeds are bigger than this, you should make sure they get out of the garden. The best time to take weeds out is at the 4-leaf stage.
4 leaves.
Okay. And see, here is before and after. There's still a few left here.
Okay.
I am growing onions, bunching onions.
Okay.
Fall crop of bunching onions. So
Right.
we seeded these about 4 to 6 weeks ago. And because it's been dry, the germination's been poor.
They're carrots.
Yeah. Okay. They're a little difficult to find amongst the weeds, but they're also very influenced by the weed pressure. So it is more important that these crops are weeded well and regularly. With these bunching onions, what I'm going to do is weed everything by hand, and then I'm going at day 14 after I've weeded. It'll be scheduled that I'll go in between the rows with a hoe to kind of knock back the next crop of weed coming. And then after that, the week after, we will weed by hand again. With the bigger crops like peas and beans, usually after I seed, at day 14, I hoe because they're easier to see. With the smaller crops, you have to go in with a hand weeder. Because they're harder to see and harder to tell, so it's a little bit more challenging. So the bigger crops, peas, beans, beets, even turnip, you can hoe in between at day 14. Day 14 and day 28 you hoe, and then you can go in with your first weeding after. This year we have been hoeing after we weed, and what that does, it loosens up the soil so the top layer of the soil will dry up faster. If the top layer of the soil is dry, the weeds don't germinate. Tender crops like bunching onions and carrots, it's a little finickier.
Right.
I would even put spinach in this category too. Then how do you start? That's the million-dollar question. First of all, when you're weeding, you use your knees, not your back. When you stand, you normally stand like this. Your feet are at your shoulder. Well, if you bend down to weed, you're more likely to use your back than your knees. 2 feet in between your feet, you're more likely to use your knees with your back, so there your back doesn't get as sore. I'm left-handed, so I always work from left to right. I start at the edge of the row, and then I just pull till I find where the crop is. Okay. Now, the crop is here. The crop is here and the crop is here. So there's 2 rows of bunching onions, one here and one here. So I can go in the center and just roughly take the center out. Okay? And then you can grab a bigger bunch of weeds at the time. To pull one weed at the time is a waste of time.
So that means if you seed in a straight line, that helps a lot to weed.
Yes. Take out what's at the outer edge. Okay. And then I establish where my crop is. And then I go in and roughly take the center.
You're professional.
Okay. And you can grab a bunch at the time.
Right.
Then I work my way around the crop. I do it individually, one weed at the time, but I put them in my hand because if you pull one weed and put it in the bucket, you're constantly moving your arm, whereas this way, you're just moving your fingers, okay, and then you move your arm when your hand is full. Now I try to take out all the small weeds I can. And lo and behold, here's a little bit of bunching onions. And when you pull your weeds, it's good to pull away from your crop. You can see what your crop is doing, so that way if accidentally you pull it out, you could kind of plant it again. And see, I have my elbow on my knee because it's after lunch and I'm getting a little tired. You know, I'm not 25 anymore. I'm only 26, but, and see here, I left a lot on the other side too, so instead of pulling this way, I will go and then pull from this side because I left a little extra, okay? And usually within 24 hours of weeding, when the weeds are this small, you'll see the crops kind of get real ambitious after. Okay, I'll start the next row. Gotta figure out where it is. This one I'm not quite sure, so I'm not gonna weed as wide, just to be doubly sure of the easy stuff. And when you are weeding, you should always shake all the dirt off, always. Because your dirt is your most valuable resource and you don't need to be wasting it. Now, weeds this size, a lot of summer students hate doing them, okay? It's a more precise type of weeding and I only let the skilled students do it. Okay, this weed that's growing here is redwood pigweed, and it's a sign that my soil is very fertile, okay? I just pull one at a time.
Right.
And see, one little onion popped out. I just plant it again. Okay. Because the germination was not even here, I have little stuff and bigger stuff. So it makes it a little harder. So that's kind of why I'm weeding it and not the summer students. And they don't mind me doing that. So, but sometimes we can't weed at the perfect moment all the time. This level of weeds, or weeds this size, don't affect the crop much, okay? But when we let the weeds get bigger than this, it does have a drastic influence on the crop. And this year, we planted the same amount of peas and beans as normal, but yet we harvested double the amount of peas and beans than last year. And the only difference was we weeded a lot better. And that made the difference, a 50% difference in yields.
That's big.
That's big. And sometimes when you weed, you will forget some. And the key is the second time you weed, go over your area, what you forgot the first time, you got to make sure you get it. Because for example, these little weeds in 4 weeks can be up to that high. This is an example of a perfectly weeded garden. This garden was all weeded earlier this week, and that's the goal of most vegetable gardens, to try to keep it as weed-free as possible to maximize the growth of the plants. This one here, we planted a green manure crop. You see there's clover growing between the dill and the kale, and that's to reduce the weeding. This one was mulched with grass clippings to reduce the weeding. These ones were hoed at day 14 after seeding and at day 28 after seeding. And then the squash is all mulched with hay to reduce the weeding.
Mulch.
I just showed in the first garden how properly weeded it is, and here we did the same. We used a green manure crop to outcompete the weeds, but see, the weeds are a little bit bigger. The redwood pigweed, it's a little bit bigger, and this hasn't been weeded about 4 weeks. See how faster they grow after a certain size?
Right.
Well, first of all, you need to know what a weed looks like.
That's important.
You need to know what your crop looks like, because if you don't know what your crop is, you don't know what's a weed and what's a crop. So here we have broccoli, summer savory, just to distract the bugs. And then we have a crop, a green manure crop, which is the clover. So everything that's not broccoli, summer savory, or the green manure crop has to go. I always work from where I am standing in. I do half the bed one side, turn around, do the other half of the bed.
And your bed is
4 by 35.
4 by 35. Okay.
Okay, so that's about between half an hour to 45 minutes worth of weeding for
45
an experienced person. A beginner, it'll probably take you an hour, depending on how good a shape you are. When you start with the weeding, take your time and be sure of yourself, and then work on your speed later. On our farm, we try to keep the weeding to less than 10% of the time, but sometimes that doesn't work well. The bigger the weeds are, the longer it takes to get rid of them. So I'll start here, set my feet,
Right.
weed my walkway. If you don't move things around, you can't tell. And when the weeds are bigger like this, you got to get them, and you have to get all the roots. You got to pull it close to the roots to pull it out properly. If you leave the root, it'll just grow back. A big one like this, you pull it from the roots, shake it off. Right? So it's pulling from the roots and shaking off. See, I got 3 in one swipe, right? And if you move the plants around, you will see some little ones, and then you can get rid of them faster. I start at the outside and work my way inside. So then I go to the next, and then do the same. So the walkway is all clean, and I always bring my bucket with me. We should have weeding races. What do you think, Vicky?
Weeding competition.
Not necessarily about speed, it's also about being thorough, because
That's
if I have
right.
to come and re-weed this next week,
Right.
when I'm supposed to be doing other parts of the garden, it doesn't work, right? Here, I have 3 rows of broccoli, so I weed till the middle,
Right.
and then I do this side. And I don't know if you can see where I've weeded and where I haven't.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, and then I take my bucket. No, I forgot one. And then move to the next section. And then I start all over again.
Right.
I go here, shift my weight and go there. So I'm always moving, and that helps me balance my muscles so they don't get as sore. I'm not in the same position all the time.
Right.
We planted broccoli transplants, and the same day we underseeded with the clover.
Oh,
we
same
worked
day.
the ground, transplanted the broccoli, underseeded with the clover. I've weeded everything once. This section was the hellish weeding area last year. So my weed seed bank is very, very high. So this is the second time that I've weeded everything over. Okay? And where the bunching onions were, it's the same thing. My seed bank area is very high. So the weeds are coming quite
Intensively.
aggressively.
Well, that was carpet over there.
That was a carpet.
Yeah.
But see, this was almost like a carpet. And I've weeded it over once, but then the second go around, it's not quite like a carpet.
Right.
Right? Because the clover is actually out competing red root pigweed, plus adding nitrogen to fertilize the broccoli. And then the herbs are in here to help deter the bugs, but it hasn't worked really well because I got lots of flea beetles this year.
Oh, yes.
You see it?
Yeah. I have a question about the nitrogen going back to the soil,
Yes.
the green manure.
Yes.
When it's growing, they put the nitrogen back, or
They
when
do.
it dies?
clover family and the legume family, they have what you call nodules on the roots. Those nodules take the nitrogen from the air and turn it into actually a salt called the nitrite. Then they release it into the ground.
Right, which is usable for the plants.
Which is usable for the plants. And then the plant sucks it up and puts it in its leaves. But there's always spillage. So while the plant is actively growing, there is the spillage into the ground, but there's also some on the leaves. And that's why clover is a very high nutrient crop to feed livestock, because they can take the high nitrites in the leaves and digest it, and with the bacteria in their gut, ruminants, they can make protein with it. That's why beef is very efficiently grown with clover. You can use field peas. I like the crimson clover because it naturally dies back during the winter, and that way I don't have to worry about plowing it under. We're no-till, so we don't plow under. So this works really well, and it dies back, and the worms bring it all into the soil.
Right.
And then everybody's happy. If we leave this like this, and don't weed for another 4 weeks, I'll show you pictures of what it looks like after.
Okay, so
this one first. This one, yes. Okay. These ones are greatly affecting the yield. After the weeds outcompete the crops, they naturally generate flowering. And all these flowers are seeds for next year.
Right.
So next year, I will have a lot of weeds here. So next year, while I'm designing my crop plan, it's a good idea to grow a crop here that will need a mulch, like the squash. But this can still be salvaged because there's not a lot, okay? There's still room for the crop to grow. The crop is kind of struggling. So what we're going to do is we're going to weed these out, and then we're going to give them a little bit of worm castings just to get the crop going again a little bit. And hopefully we'll get rain to kind of activate the soil.
Right.
And then the crop will finish off. I will not get as a good yield as if the crop was properly weeded, but I'll get some yield. It's a good idea not to do this. But if you are in this situation and you have a little bit more backbone, you can do salvage operation. When weeds are this big, they're a pain in the ass to pull.
Right. And they disturb a lot of soil around, right?
Yes. Okay. So, and you can damage some of the crops. And sometimes you will need a trowel. Okay? Even though you're focusing on the big ones, you gotta look for the little ones too, right? And see, this is what happens. You wound up taking out part of the crop.
Right.
Okay? And see, you have to pull at the bottom. To pull them at the top, you're wasting your time. Now, as you can tell, the other one, I was able to go a lot further, a lot faster. It's a good idea not to do it in the heat of the day because you're using your muscles a little bit more.
Right.
What happens if you leave these for another 4 to 6 weeks? Oh, your helmet hair looks great now with the weed seeds in it. This is what happens, and then it's game over.
So if it goes this stage, you just
I pull everything out and start
all over again.
See here, this one hasn't been done in 4 weeks. Okay. Now let's walk through here. Now see here, the peas. Peas can't compete with weeds as well as other crops. They were all weeded at the same time.
Oh. Oh. You mean peas and the lettuce?
Yep.
Same time?
Okay.
This one?
The only difference is one can outcompete with the crop.
Holy.
Yep.
And this one.
Yeah.
So some
So peas and beans
requires
a little bit more attention, but
whoa, quite a difference.
when you do give them the attention, they produce big yields. And then after that, it's the same thing. Okay, here we have two things happening. We have the bigger weeds were left from the first time, and it's been 4 weeks. And then the smaller ones are the ones that came up. You can't even see what crop it is here, right?
No. Oh, spinach.
Yes.
Found it.
Was weeded a week ago, and that side was not.
A week ago weeded.
And this one was not.
It's not weeded.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Now here,
Not
we've
weeded.
been regularly weeding this garden every 2 weeks. It's scheduled to be weeded on Monday.
Okay.
The last time they weeded through this, they broke the weeding record for how fast to weed this garden.
That's right.
So the crops that are near maturation, there's not a lot of weeds at all. The smaller crops, there is a little bit more weeds.
Yeah, more space, right? That's why.
There's more space, and you see there's a few more weeds.
Right.
The tomatoes are getting to the ripening stage. You have to be careful, but also you notice tomatoes don't have white blossoms, do they? We intercrop the tomatoes with flowers to attract the beneficial insects. So you have to know what a flower is and what a weed is.
That's right.
Okay, 2 weeks ago?
Right.
Okay. See what's happening here? It's getting ready to bloom. This is redroot pigweed again. This is my nemesis. A lot of the weed plants, by the time they're starting to bloom, have enough energy left to finish the seed set. So it's a good idea to take them out of the garden, or else you're sowing weeds.
Yes.
The noxious weeds we compost, and the weeds that the livestock can eat, we let them digest it.